One of the biggest problems about nuclear power plants is they basically can't be turned off. It's extremely difficult to do so. And you need to go through a very challenging process to shut them down. In other words, if you install a nuclear power plant in a grid where, while the grid no longer needs those nuclear power plants, just say for a few days or a week or so, it provides some enormous challenges. However, there could potentially be a nuclear catastrophe in the short term, thanks to the war in Russia and Ukraine, which has triggered grave warnings from the United Nations Nuclear Agency about the danger of a major nuclear accident. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Vine. YouTube's new algorithm means that you're often not getting all of our videos in your feed. There's 7,500. I'm pretty sure you're probably not seeing a lot of them. In the description, there is a link to our newsletter. Click on that and you can get an update every day of all the latest news in the electric car industry. Reuters has just reported that external power must be restored to the vast Soviet-built nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, which is being cooled by emergency diesel generators after an external line was severed during fighting, Russia said on Wednesday. Fighting an intense drone and artillery war around several East Soviet-era nuclear power stations in Ukraine have repeatedly triggered grave warnings from the United Nations Nuclear Agency about the danger of an imminent nuclear threat. And really, a major nuclear accident could be just around the corner. The plant's Russian-installed management said that backup electricity supply was sufficient for now and that radiation levels were currently sort of normal, but that it was important that external power was restored as soon as possible. The situation at the station is under control, said Yevgenia Yashina, a spokeswoman for the plant, saying that staff of the plant knew what to do and that radiation levels were under control. But there is a risk of a meltdown. The Russian management said that Ukrainian shelling cut the last remaining power line, the high-voltage Dniprovskaya line, on September 23, and that Ukrainian shelling was preventing its repair. Ukraine said that Russian shelling was preventing the restoration of external power. In other words, both sides are blaming each other. Power is needed to pump water around the plant to cool the reactors and the spent fuel, the International Atomic Energy Agency said. And the reality is, when you turn off a nuclear power plant, it drastically reduces the lifetime of that power plant. The nuclear rods deteriorate at a much faster pace. Europe's largest nuclear power plant has been without external power for more than a week now, which is by far the longest lasting such event during more than 3.5 years of war, said the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, amidst concerns from the agency. The Russian management said the emergency generators were sufficient for now, they hoped they were, and that only some were being used. All equipment was functioning as normal, it said. But the plant has 6 Soviet-designed VVER 1000 V320 water-cooled and water-moderated reactors containing uranium-235. All reactors are currently shut down, but the risk is that without any power, external or supplied by the emergency generators, the nuclear fuel, which sits just 500 kilometers from the site of the world's worst nuclear accident, the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, would not be cooled and would risk a meltdown. The current status of the reactor units and spent fuel is stable as long as the emergency diesel generators are able to provide sufficient power to maintain essential safety-related functions and cooling. If these emergency diesel generators stop working, there would be a nuclear disaster. Russian forces actually seized this nuclear power plant in 2022, shortly after President Vladimir Putin sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine. Russia has controlled the plant ever since. Thanks for watching. The Sydney EV International Motor Show. If you want to get a 50% discount on your tickets, all you got to do, click the link in the description and use the promotion code that's in the description. Just copy and paste that. Now, I should mention there's only 200 tickets available per day. So if you go to use the promo code and you can't get a ticket, wait till the next day. Don't wait until the day before the show to get your tickets, because otherwise you'll probably miss out on getting the 50% discount. The US power grid is adding an incredible amount of batteries, and I think we're kind of missing just how many being added. California is a really good example for what's happening. In California, millions and millions of dollars of solar energy were being completely wasted, or curtailed as they call it, during the day. And all of a sudden, all the enormous batteries that were installed in California enabled the state to be able to move away from fossil fuels, so that between the peak time, 6 to 10 p.m. in the evenings, batteries now supply the primary amount of the number one supplier of energy during that peak time. But actually, it's not just California that's installing mega batteries. The rest of the US is doing it as well. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. Great to have you with us. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. I'll be at the Sydney EV show on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of November. Would love to see you there. And I've got free tickets for everyone. I'll put a link in the description below. There's 3 different promo codes. You can use them depending on the day you're coming. The US power grid has added the battery equivalent of 20 nuclear reactors in the past 4 years. Now that sounds really good, right? The battery equivalent of 20 nuclear reactors. Obviously, there's certain interests, certain fossil fuel interests who don't want you to know this, of course. I mean, for example, companies building these nuclear power plants, people who just have a vested emotional interest in the concept of fossil fuels or nuclear power. I understand it. I used to be one of them. I used to think that nuclear power was brilliant. It was the solution. Now I've realized that actually economically it doesn't make sense. But anyhow, what is incredible about all of this is that 20 nuclear reactors, the equivalent to 20 nuclear reactors of batteries, right? But if we have a look at what's happening, you start to realize that that is actually not that impressive. Now, it is impressive, don't get me wrong, but the trajectory and the speed of battery deployments is so much faster now than what it was a few years ago. The US is likely to install as many batteries in 2024 and 2025 as what was installed combined over the past 50 years. So within a 2-year period, more batteries will be deployed and built in the US than what were deployed and built over the previous 50 years. So really that 20 nuclear reactors, it's an impressive number. Between 2024 and 2030, probably the equivalent to around 50 nuclear reactors will be built in the US.